Tuesday. Thank you so much for joining us today. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you might be joining us from in the world today. My name is Meg Alexander. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. And if you'd like a visual call out, I am a 39-year-old white woman with pink and purple hair and blue glasses. All right, I am incredibly excited, as always, to get to welcome y'all to another Power to Fly virtual event. Today, we're going to be talking about prompt like a pro. Now, before we go and dive into today's event, I do want to real quick flash our code of conduct up on the screen there for y'all. It looks like a big, scary wall of legalese, but truly, y'all, it just boils down to don't act like a jerk, okay? As long as we operate from a place of kindness and respect, it's pretty hard to go wrong from there. But if you want further details on this, you have, more questions, you can always DM me, find my name, Meg Alexander, in the chat dropdown, or you are always welcome to email our help desk inbox. That email is hi@powertofly.com. All right, next slide, please. Now, this is going to be some housekeeping that will be especially important if today is your first event with Power to Fly. And if that's the case, hi, welcome. We're so happy to meet you. Now, the love is no less real for my frequent flyers. Thank you to everyone who's joining us today, whether it is your second event or your 400th. We are always, always, always so happy to see all of you. And very flattered and honored that you chose to spend an hour of your day with Power to Fly and amazing companies like Skill Crush. Now, the thing to know about Power to Fly events is participation. We want to encourage you to get the most out of today's event. So you are always encouraged, if you'd like, to turn your cameras on and share your smiling, maskless faces with us safely. Now, there is no need to be Instagram perfect, okay? Just because I got real fancy and actually washed my hair today does not mean that you can't show up from your living room couch, your kitchen table, whatever it is, it makes no difference to us. Okay, you can be in a three-piece suit or your bathrobe. Makes no difference. We just want to meet you where you are. Now, if you don't want to come on camera, that's okay. You don't have to do that. You can always head over to the chat. And from there, I very much encourage you to interact with your fellow attendees today, ask questions if you have them. We would love, love, love to be able to answer and address any questions that you have for today's subject matter. Now, we are recording as well as live streaming to YouTube. Hi, YouTube. And what that means for all of you is you don't have to take notes. You get to sit back, enjoy the conversation that Tori and I are going to have, and not worry if you miss a resource that was shared or a link that was listed, okay? Now, what's going to happen is in 4 to 5 business days, Power to Fly is going to email everybody a link to where you can view this recording when we post it live on powertofly.com. Now, that, like I said, that'll take like 4 to 5 business days. So let's say Tori says something today that is like mind-blowing, paradigm shifting. You cannot wait 4 to 5 business days to share this information with a friend or a coworker or a relative. You don't have to. You can head over to our YouTube channel. We'll be posting links for all of this in the chat thread as we go. But you can head to our YouTube channel, and the video from today is usually posted by the end of business today. Okay. Now, from our from our YouTube channel, there is a kind of a selection. Some of our best of greatest hits, chat and learns are stored there. So I very much recommend you take a look. Subscribing to the YouTube channel is also a really great way to make sure that you don't miss upcoming events. But the other thing that is really important with this is that you do want to take a look at our website as well, because powertofly.com, that is where the mother lode of all of our resources live there. Okay, they're completely free. We want to put them in the hands of as many people as possible. So I very much recommend that you check out our website. Now, like I said, we're gonna email everybody that registered. So even if you weren't able to make it with us today, you won't have to worry about it. And there's some other great stuff on the website as well. We'll go more into detail on that in a little bit. Now, before I introduce you to our speaker for today, I just really quickly want to tell you a little bit about Power to Fly in case maybe you came to this without some awareness of who we are. So Power to Fly is a women-led company. We are backed by Morgan Stanley with over 200 million plus professionals in our network. Now, our mission is to help organizations attract top talent and retain engaged employees with solutions that help simplify recruitment, enhance employee satisfaction, and drive long-term business success. We've also been at the forefront of the future of work and remain huge advocates for remote work, posting thousands of remote roles as well as in-person opportunities on our website. If you want any more information about us, you're curious, please don't hesitate to ask. Again, you can always email our help desk inbox as well. All right, now to the main event. I'm very excited to introduce y'all to Tori St. Clair. Now, she is an instructor and an enrollment counselor with Skill Crush by Power to Fly. Tori's break into tech story started at Skill Crush, and now she helps others write their own. After 10 years as a front desk admin, Tori made the leap into tech and now guides students through the Break into Tech program with empathy, structure, and insight. As a proud queer Latina, Tori's mission is to open doors for underrepresented communities in tech. When she's off the clock, she's cooking, hiking, or on the dance floor. Tori, I am so excited to welcome you to the stage. I know that you're going to take over from me here, so I can just sit in the background a little bit. But before we do that, what else should our audience members know about you before we talk more about crafting a prompt like a pro?
I just want to throw out there, this is absolutely one of my favorite topics. Ever since, AI hit the scene, there's been so much controversy around it that I have been following, like, with bated breath. And it's really come full circle in this way where I have realized that if approached properly, it can really be an asset as a human. And that's really what I want to kind of lead with here. And I think that it's, going to be I'm really excited to just get into this topic for y'all in a way that's going to make it more actionable and productive for you.
All right, I'm going to sit in the background. I do want to encourage y'all, like I said, if you want to chime in the group chat, let us know. I'll have eyes on the chat the entire time. So if you want to go in deeper, if you're curious about, a term that Tori is talking about, anything, please feel free to ask questions. I'll collect all of them. We'll try to get to as many as we can today. And super, super excited to dive into today's subject. So, all right, I'm gonna go
Yeah.
off camera, but I will be here the entire time.
All right. Thanks, Meg. And hi, Shusti. Thank you so much for coming. I'm glad you made it. And Shana, so sorry. I think might be Shana. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. So, I am going to be asking y'all um, some poll questions in the chat that I hope you'll engage with me. So, Rob, if you could put out that first question. And these are totally optional. You can, you, I would love to know, what you think of when you hear the phrase prompt engineering. And the results will be shared, but all answers will be anonymous. There will be no names. And it's out now. So if you don't see it pop up, give it a second or two. It's going to pop up. And for those on your phone, it's going to take over your whole screen. So you can press the corner X to exit, but it will also close automatically after you answer. We're just going to give this a minute or two. And then you'll all see the answers so we can get a little, fun kind of look at where everybody's coming from that's in the room today. Hi, Kathy and Titiana. All right. So, oh, I think they're sharing live. How nice. Okay. So people are thinking writing better prompts when working with AI tools. And the second highest answer is, I'm not sure, but that's what I'm here to find out. So I love that. All right, great. Oh, here we go. Now I can share them. Nope, nope. Sorry about that, y'all. Okay, and so if you can put out question 2, please, Rob. So prompt engineering is designing inputs that reliably produce the outputs you want from an AI model. And parameters are going to shape the model's behavior. Parameters include role instructions, and I put examples of all of this, context, constraints, format requests, and examples that you can input in directly, which is one of the most useful things about the models. So I asked, how do you approach creating prompts when working with AI? And a lot of people say the highest answer so far is I wing it and keep prompting until I get something workable. All right, awesome. So I hope to kind of create a perspective for you that'll help you do this in a way that will get you the results that you want faster, that you kind of know what's going on and know how to approach it. Second highest answers, I look for prompts others have created that I could use, and that is a great place to start. There's a lot of great resources for that. What I'm going to mostly be talking about here is how to approach creating them for yourself. So we're going to mostly be talking about how to iterate on a prompt to make it better so that you can get better results. The same request can be rewarded at 3 levels of quality. So this is an example if you're working with AI for your resume. Um, Okay. Yeah. Okay. I'm still getting used to the poll. So sorry, everybody. And so you could say, help me fix my resume. But an improved way of saying that is help me improve my resume for a front-end developer role. So you at least kind of gave it some direction. But a really excellent way of doing this is kind of understanding that you're going to be assigning all of those parameters that I mentioned before. And those are going to come up again and again throughout this webinar. So you're giving it a role. And so that's being a technical recruiter. You're defining the audience. And so this is mid-level, this is context for mid-level front-end developers. And your target role, which is also context, React TypeScript front-end engineer at a SaaS company. And then you're giving it constraints, which are well, not so much constraints as it is what the format you want, and then the directions you would like it to follow. Identify weak bullet points, rewrite them, suggest what might be missing for this role, and to keep the tone concise and achievement focused. And then for generating content for LinkedIn, you could say, write a LinkedIn post about AI. But if you give a general prompt, you're going to get a very general answer. Kathy asked for me to share the constraints again, and I'm going to go back real quick just because this is so important throughout this whole webinar, but I want to remind you all, you will be getting a replay, so you don't need to get it all, you know, like right now. It's kind of more, you're going to get a lot more from absorbing the overall kind of message here, and then you can go back for the details if you'd like. Yeah, role instructions, context, constraints, format requests, and examples. You can even take a screenshot of this if you'd like. Okay, but I do have a lot to share with you all today, so I'm going to move along. You're very welcome, Kathy. All right, so we're going to go over some very common prompting mistakes and then what the mistake is and why, and then how to make a better example here. And that's going to be the majority of this webinar, and you'll kind of see the same themes of the parameters coming up time and time again. So if you're asking for the mistake is asking for the best without defining what qualities are most desirable. So a bad example is, what's the best programming language? The mistake is the model doesn't know what best means to you, so it guesses based on common interpretations, which may not match your goal. A better way of asking this is, what programming language, as an example, what programming language is best for building simple data visualization dashboards quickly for beginners? Compare 3 options and explain the trade-offs. And this is a big tip that you'll see a lot, asking it to explain itself so you understand where it's coming from and you're not just like accepting its answers as rote. When it explains itself, you might also be able to discern that when it explained this is why this is the best, you're like, actually, I said beginner, but I need to do some pretty advanced stuff. So I need to tweak my prompt instead to be advanced. And it keeps explaining, this is for easy stuff, this is for easy stuff, and I need to do some advanced stuff. So when you ask why it chose what it did, it'll allow you to be more selective in your answers. Asking the model to write this better or improve this without defining the problem points or criteria is another common mistake people will make. So you're saying, rewrite this update on my department for the org meeting to make it better. You ask the model to make improvements without explaining what isn't working or what kind of improvement you want. So the model has to guess, again, giving you a more general or maybe missing the point kind of answer. A better way to say this is, rewrite this to sound more professional and concise, keep the key points, reduce it to about 120 words, and remove repetitive phrases. And a lot of these, I'm not assigning a role in the example. It depends on if that's really going to help um, the what you need or the audience. So you might want to say the audience in this example, where it's like the audience is stakeholders. The audience is I'm a developer, but I need to be working with the design team. So that kind of context is relevant. But if it's just like the general org meeting, then that might not be relevant. Or you may want to give what kind of company you are, what your product is, that your focus is. Overloading the prompt with conflicting requirements is a common mistake. Make it extremely detailed, super short, and include everything is conflicting. So you accidentally make the task impossible. So a better way to approach this would be to say, write a concise summary in 3 bullets, then a detailed explanation, 200 to 300 words. So another thing that I will touch on again a little bit later is that um, the model is only as good as what you put into it, which is the common theme here. And also with you understanding like what you need and how to approach it well. And honestly, a lot of this is true of communicating with another human being. You're going to get better results from them if you don't just throw up at them, make this better, give me everything at once, but also make it really short. Like that's not going to work for a human, and it's definitely not going to work for the model. And so you might have to pause and think about like, your question, your what you need, and that'll allow you to get to the answer better. And honestly, this is so much easier said than done, and a lot of people have made their entire incredibly successful careers out of being the type of people that are good at asking the right questions, that are good at focusing on the right thing. But that is what the model asks of you in order to get the best results that you're looking for. So that's what becomes your strength as a prompter if you work on this as a skill. I also like to really kind of draw this comparison to searching with Google or searching with your favorite search, Bing or Yahoo, whichever is your favorite search engine. We all had to get used to that over time. We all had to, maybe we learned some tricks about how if you say and you put things in quotes, then it'll make sure to include all of those things because you strung them together with and and or you put not to make sure it discluded certain things, and you put search around it, but you also kind of got this feel for what was going to get you the answer in terms of the phrasing that you needed to use. And some people are really good at that, some people are not. And oftentimes when you're learning something brand new, you'll realize you don't even know what to search. And part of the learning process is getting good at asking the right questions about this new subject matter that you're learning. So a lot of this comes into play with prompting as well, that you are learning how to ask the good questions according to what the model needs, which thankfully is a little more forgiving. You can use like something like this, I don't know the right words, blah, and it has more of an understanding of the human language and connotation than search engines do. So you can work with that, but just giving it nothing because you're not sure how to phrase it is actually not going to get you as far as you at least trying to phrase like something like this, but not like this. Can you give me some results? And then going from there and working with it. Another common mistake is not telling the model what to prioritize if you have multiple requirements, like improve this email by making it shorter, clearer, supportive, and urgent. So the mistake that happens with the model internally is that the model tries to optimize everything equally, and the output doesn't meet the goals as a result. So a better way to do this is to prioritize, to give it a list of priorities because it does things in a structured way. It reads your question and then decides how to approach it, which is which is part of the power of large language models. And so you'll put clear, tell it you want it clearer. The second priority is shorter, and keep that supportive tone, and then increase urgency without pressure. So now that we've talked about a few examples, I would really love if y'all chimed in the chat about why this might be a bad example. Explain this technical concept simply. Yes, Kathy said, simple for whom? What is simply? Exactly. It's like then you start getting existential. But you kind of do have to imagine that you're maybe talking to somebody who's like, not in your head, where you need to You need to like get it out, communicate clearly. Simple is subjective. How to explain narrative bullet points. Yeah, it's really lacking that like which format you would like it in. War and Peace or Cliff Notes style. Ooh, yes, you could definitely reference those kind of like styles without being so specific because it has that kind of search capability. The audience is not defined. Maybe give the aimed impact. Who's the targeted receiver of the message? Simply is ambiguous. Not identifying the technical concept exactly. So that's the main thing I was getting at here. There's like hidden assumptions and missing definitions, mostly for simple, beginner, and technical. Again, not all of these are addressing like who the audience is unless it's really relevant, but this one does. Your audience is a non-technical person and kind of set some formatting requests, like explain it in 3 paragraphs. So that keeps it the kind of short that you would like. What is simply? Maybe that's 3 paragraphs to you. Maybe that's 2 sentences to you and using one analogy, no jargon, define any necessary terms. You're kind of setting a limit on how many analogies, because sometimes when you ask it, like, explain it to me like I'm a 5-year-old, it'll go off in this crazy metaphor that you're like, okay, that's fun, but does it really apply? Or now I'm just stuck on you talking about a teddy bear when I'm actually trying to learn a coding concept. I had this experience when I asked the model about learning about objects in programming. And then it was like, imagine that you have a teddy bear. And I was like, okay, now I feel really nice about the teddy bear that I have, but I don't really feel like I understand this as a programming concept. And no jargon kind of at least clarifies jargon is an industry specific thing. It means like you're not using words as if you're already a technical person and define any necessary terms that you have to use in order to explain this well so that it can be broken down for somebody who's non-technical. Another common mistake is asking for accuracy without insisting that the model provide sources. A common question that I saw when y'all submitted is, how can I make sure that it is accurate? Um, Kathy said, is there any difference in prompt strategy with different large language models? Or I guess okay. Or does this apply generally to all of them? This is a general um, for all of the major large language models being Claude, ChatGPT, and I always forget the third one because I primarily use Claude and ChatGPT. But there are some differences in their strengths and weaknesses, and really, Copilot, thank you so much. Those are the major 3 that you can really only get a flavor for when you are working with them. And really, it's kind of more so about how they create outputs, more so than how you put in your inputs. Yeah, Rob said, when preparing for executive events, I make sure sources are included for all statistics. So you may ask, what are the stats on AI adoption in 2025? But the model may confidently hallucinate details. You may have heard that this is an issue with them, and it still is. Give me AI adoption stats only if you can cite sources is a way to constrain this. And if you can't tell me what you're sure about and then suggest, if you can't, tell me what you're unsure about and suggest what to search. So Kathy said, how can I make sure the sources are real? You're going to have to look at them yourself. And this is something I'll touch on later, but this is especially important if you're if you're trying to give financial, medical, or legal advice. You have to have oversight. You cannot just believe it. Check trust but verify is kind of an overarching rule. If the facts are, it's very important that the facts be accurate. Let's see. And then if you ask for too many options without a selection system, then you could really kind of, if you say, give me 100 taglines, you get 50 mediocre ideas instead of 10 strong ones. And 50 is honestly, I don't know why I put 50. It's probably more like 80 mediocre and maybe 20 that are like mostly good, but because you were too general. So give me 12 taglines, then score 1 to 5 for clarity and uniqueness. Then recommend top 3 and explain why you made each choice is really going to help you kind of approach this in a way that's going to get you stronger results. as opposed to just being like, what's the point of saying, give me 100? And then like, it's just like, okay, I'm gonna just give you some a whole list of generic things because you forced me to. And then you have to do the work of sifting through all the bad and good ones. Why not use the model to help you get down to the core of what the good ones are? Of course, this is provided that you would give it more criteria, but just zoning in on what the problem area of that kind of request can be for this common mistake. And then treating the model like it remembers earlier details. This is improving over time. But models, especially lower tier or free models, will always prioritize performance, and they'll be unable to review all of the conversations for every answer. So remember that even in the same chat, it can lose track. And this is true of paid models as well. Again, the priority is performance. This is software. We'll talk a little bit later about how you can change this process if you need it to um, kind of reference your whole conversation or reference lots of details. But there's so Kathy said, isn't there a setting that you can adjust so that the LLM remembers? Yes, but it still doesn't work perfectly if you've worked with this. And so assuming, especially if it's important, like you need a particular format, then give it to it again and you're much more likely to get what you want instead of assuming it's going to remember it. And also, it's well, first of all, it's not that great, and it's not that great at doing it even when the setting is on. And secondly, it's going to take more computing power, and you may start having to get into tiers where you're going to have to pay for tokens and things like that if that's what you need. So if you're wanting it to be, if you're using like a free or lower tier model, and just in general, honestly, if that context is important, you'll probably want to give it again. We'll talk a little bit later about how you can create programs in such a way that things are built into it, but that's actually kind of a whole different thing. And then if you're going to do complex work, using a one-shot prompt with everything in it is not going to get you as good of results. So bad examples, make me a full launch campaign for a cooking course. Maybe even if you're really specific about what that cooking course needs, the complex work is the full launch campaign. So the mistake is trying to get full strategy, plan, and final output in one prompt. So it's better to do it in multiple steps. Put in the known requirements and constraints for the campaign, then prompt the model. Ask 5 questions to clarify audience and offer. This is a tip I'll be rehashing again later. You can ask it to ask you questions to make sure it has everything you need to get a quality result that you may not have realized you didn't give it. And then after it gives you that answer, then say propose 3 campaign angles. And then as the third step that you take, write assets for the chosen angle. Latoya said I create projects and attach reference documents for it to refer back to, and you can absolutely do that. It's just not that great at it because of this priority of energy spent. And it's just what software needs to prioritize is performance. So it's not going to be perfect at that. So if you need it for that particular prompt that you're putting in, you can even tell it what to review to help save it its processing power, and then it'll focus on those areas and be more likely to include them. So if you're like, I have a reference doc, pay attention to these 2 areas when creating the prompt for me, you're much more likely to get a result that, assuming that it's going to be incorporating in your entire reference doc for every answer. Perfect, Latoya. Awesome. They said that's what they already do. So now let's get into some general tips. And if Rob, can you please put in the question 3 here? So as we've touched on a lot of these so far, you can tell it to ask you questions. This prompts the model to gather what it needs before answering to get more targeted output. Then think longer is a prompt direct instruction that you can put in that extends the reasoning time, leading to more thorough responses and likelihood that the output has been checked for accuracy and cross-referenced. And if that's very important for it to be cross-referenced for you, then you will want to put in that that think longer, and please be sure to cross-reference and maybe even list the sources that you use to cross-reference, which you will have to check to make sure that they are real sources, just like we've always had to do when searching for factual information on the internet. So I just want to get a little bit more into what's happening when you say think longer. It means more computation is directed towards generating the answer that is given for all questions, that then is given for all questions. So when it's prioritizing its processing power for your general questions, you're assuming it's taking in the consideration for everything. That's just not true. So in order to allow for users to take advantage of the fact that it can use more computing power, there is a way to prompt that, because it's just not going to be doing that for every single little thing you ask. It's working over, a large bandwidth of lots of people, lots and lots of people using it. It's going to prioritize performance first. So it encourages structured reasoning patterns with more steps. Prompts like this push the model towards behaviors similar to chain of thought reasoning. So that's what it's called. It'll break problems into steps. It'll evaluate intermediate results. So it'll ask a question, it'll evaluate those results, and then it'll decide where to go from there. It'll correct mistakes before answering by checking its own response for accuracy, which does get you generally further. Still needs oversight. The model effectively generates something like step 1, understand the problem. Step 2, consider possible interpretations. Step 3, solve the subparts of the prompt. And then step 4, verify the result. And step 5, produce the final answer. And then you might want to ask for alternatives, which allows you to kind of get a view for different ways that you could be approaching this that you may not have thought. And you were just giving it a very specific direction, thinking that this was the best way. But if you ask it for alternatives, it might open your mind up to the fact that there's other approaches. And then explanations is one I highly recommend, which really allows you to troubleshoot and also learn something instead of just relying on it all the time. And see if it's not coming from the place that you were intending for it to come from. And then provide tone examples. You can share a writing sample, ask the model to analyze its tone, then reuse the that description for future prompts. So you can say, what is the tone of this, to get an idea of what it thinks and would describe, how it would describe the tone. Then you can use those words when you're trying to create future prompts, if that's a common tone that you want to use. So this is not really so much about tips for better outputs, but now we've gone over, this last thing I'm going to add is that now that we've gone over some examples of the ways that the output of the model is so dependent on the quality of understanding and communication of the user, I want to throw in that one of the best use cases for AI is to use it to increase your own knowledge. Ideally, you are learning from multiple resources, of which LLMs are just one. But as you go, you could use AI to test your understanding, practice explaining, and ask if there are holes in your reasoning, etc. So this isn't so much about getting better outputs, but I just wanted to throw that out there. All right, let's look at, how do we see the results of this one? I can't see them. I was
Tori, I'm
hoping we
actually
could.
just going to share those in the chat for you
Oh,
to
great. You
read
can
off.
see them. Awesome. I've hid in the chat for myself. Here we are. Check for differences in the platforms you use every day. They are changing all the time. My preference is Claude, and back in a few months ago when I used Claude, I didn't like it as much, and it has improved so much. That's a great tip. The average pattern many AI models follow are role, context, task, output forms. Yes. And so if you follow that, constraints and final check optional. That's awesome. Thank you so much for providing kind of like the pattern so that it's easy for it to know where you're looking for things. Create your own GPT. Help me at one job extensively. That's something I hope to get into a later chat. So thank you for pointing that out, anonymous person. I asked for a confidence rating. That's also great because it'll tell you I'm not really confident, even though the answer itself may sound really confident. It'll tell you I'm not really confident. And then you're like, oh, why did you tell it to me like that then? But at least you now know that maybe you need to do some research on this more or ask it a different, more pointed question. Yeah, thank you so much, everybody. I really appreciate that. We're all learning here and we're all learning from each other. Even people who have programmed AI are working with AI in this way that they are learning from it because it is not hard coded in the way that programming used to be. It's a process that once it is undergone, it generates outputs that are different every single time, even if you use the same prompt. So even people who program, who do machine learning and make large language models are learning in the same way that we are. So all we can do is share and learn with each other, right? And so one of the common questions I saw from y'all when you submitted is how to use AI when safeguarding sensitive data, especially for work. And this slide overall is about ethical LLM use. So it's crucial to adhere to ethical guidelines, particularly when sensitive or private data is involved. So protecting information is paramount. Never input sensitive, proprietary, or personally identifiable information, PII, directly into LLMs. Always assume inputs may be used for training or expose. Anonymize data when necessary. Swap exact figures for estimates and ranges when sensitive. So instead of putting like in the exact, money that your company is earning, put in ranges instead. Human oversight. Critically evaluate and verify all LLM outputs. Human review is essential before deploying or disseminating any content. And as I said, verify factual claims, especially legal, financial, or medical. And have transparency. So clearly communicate when LLM assistance has been used to generate or augment content. This maintains trust with colleagues, clients, and end users. As you may see, I'm going to get into this more in just a second. I have made this presentation with an AI tool called Gamma, not the content, the layout. And it was so helpful to make nice layouts for me by understanding the context of what I was putting into it and understanding that there's multiple points and how to lay it out. And of course, it still needed a lot of me going back and adjusting it, but I used AI when making this presentation today, and a lot of my experiences and the experiences of my students while we're being candid about where all of this is coming from. And familiarize yourself with both the internal company policies on AI usage and the data privacy agreements of any LLM providers you utilize. Stay compliant and informed. I also will touch on that there are enterprise level large language model tiers. And oftentimes there's a data protection agreement in place, a DPA. And in that case, you can trust more that the data will not be shared. Some companies have a more cautious, compliant way to work with the model still, where they won't put in the most sensitive data, and especially, people's names, personal information, etc. But some of them, because they are working with this enterprise model with the data protection in place, will trust that it won't be shared, and they're okay and lenient with doing that. So that's another option as well. If people are like, I want to use this at work, anonymize the data, and unless you're working with an enterprise model and your company allows for that. But it's a good best practice. So this is a big common through point throughout all of this. AI is only as useful as the human behind it. The more thoughtful work you invest up front, the higher quality your outputs will be. So curate quality data, define specific criteria, and outline your precise objectives before crafting your prompt. In the context, consider your audience, the desired value, and the specific use case. Providing this context guides the AI to more relevant outputs. And so this is really where you're going to, if you rely on it to generate everything, you're not going to get nearly as good of results as you put all of your human effort in, and ideally your professional, specialized efforts into knowing what's quality data versus not. knowing what is the criteria that makes your company successful for that particular campaign, who your audience is, because you're actually talking with them and gathering feedback from them. All of those things are going to generate you a much, much, much better output than you just going, oh, well, we need to make a new campaign. Well, the AI can do that. Make me a full campaign. First of all, not a good prompt. But even if you prompt it well, if you don't give it context that you have researched, it's not just context you've pulled out of from a hat, but that you have researched, and you don't define what is the input that you're going to give it to review the what makes the data good and quality, which is, people assume that if you don't work with data a lot, it's easy to assume that you just kind of like put it all, just gather everything and put it all in, but that's not going to get you answers. So how you the constraints you put on what data and how the data is collected is going to make a huge difference. So there are 3 different ways to work with a large language model, and the main one we're talking about today is the first one, chat and ask. You open up the chat box, you assign it a role, and you ask the questions directly. There are 2 other ways to work with LLMs. Vibe coding, which is building software with no code and natural language descriptions only, and developer integration. You're going to embed prompts and roles directly into your application as a developer. So that's what Gamma did in creating their program that I use. I'll talk more about that in just a second. I'm going to take a sip of tea. If you could put out question 4, Rob. She said, I found pasting my post, for example, and then asking it to edit for clarity and flow, but not changing the writing style, plus highlighting the edits makes it helpful. Yes, you're putting it in. You're not saying generate this all for me. You're putting in this is my writing. Can you help me make some edits? Is anybody else? Is everybody seeing the question? I don't know. I
Just
think I may
giving
have
me an
accidentally
issue,
closed.
Tori. So I might try to put it into the chat instead.
Okay, no problem. Did you
So
say
maybe,
it wasn't working or something?
yeah, for some reason, if you want to keep going on, I'll try to share it in the chat.
Okay. So vibe coding a project includes prompt engineering, which is what we're talking about, how to engineer the prompt itself, as well as how to spot AI hallucinations, understanding the limitations of AI, data safety practice. Oh, now it's popped up. Weird. Understanding the limitations of AI, which is a lot of what we're talking about here, data safety practices, how to take a project through the process of ideation, which is that, that bigger, there and gone. All right, I can see maybe because Rob was realizing there was an issue and so just took it down. Yeah, I can see that nobody's able to put in their input, so Rob is trying to get it into the chat. Um, So a lot of people are like, oh, I can just be a programmer now. I don't need a software engineer. I'm just going to be like, make a project. But the more than, now it's working again. What a roller coaster. More than just saying like, make me a project, you have to do all of those overarching decisions that software developers do, where they are understanding the first part that needs to happen, all that research, understanding your audience, really breaking down what the desired functionality is, what the priorities are in terms of highest and lowest priorities of what needs to be get done to get a product out there before future versions are made with lots of additions, etc. How to make sure that everything is secure, make sure that everything is going to be is not going to have like weird edge cases where if somebody clicks over here, the whole thing shuts down and actually closes down everything for everyone. Just a lot of those meta understanding that actually have nothing to do with the code. And um, testing it, oh yeah, I mentioned that, including how to pick AI tools and chain workflows using different tools for different goals. So I asked, what's your level of experience with vibe coding? And a lot of you had never heard of it, which is so interesting to me, but I'm in the tech space, so I guess that makes a lot of since this is like such a hot topic right now. It's just like coding, it's coding with vibes, but really you're just making requests to tell it to do this and this as you build a program, and you're not touching the code itself. It's making it for you. Um, and so this is more than, again, it's easier said than done. You're guiding architecture decisions. You're forcing the best practices. So you have to understand what those are. You're going to use tests. Don't hard code sensitive info, which means it's like built into the program. You do not want the sensitive data from your users hard coded into the program because that means it's dangerous. So you have to understand those kind of security limitations. Um, all right. So if you can put out question 5, please, Rob. And so then the third level of working this um, is building the power of large language models into a program, which is not to say that you're building the large language model itself. You are not doing machine learning. It's the all of those major large language models that we mentioned, Copilot, Claude, and ChatGPT, they have APIs. So it means that you are pulling their ability to understand language, which is the biggest strength of it, the way that it analyzes info into a program, and then you're embedding prompts into the app so that it's kind of this guided process for the person using the app to get to a particular purpose. For example, when I use Gamma, it was asking me for, what kind of content was I going to be putting in, and what kind of theme would I like, and all of these things that it was asking me in a structured way so that it became a program that I was using that was for a particular purpose. It wasn't just a general chat box. It was with the goal of building a presentation. You also have to put in guardrails, and you can also feed it more data that it doesn't have access to, custom data. So you would be connecting it to knowledge sources instead of relying only on the model's training data, oftentimes with APIs as well. Developers connect it to company documents, knowledge bases, or data sets so it can answer domain-specific questions, meaning it'll have more powerful answers according to that specific domain that you're asking questions for. And it'll decide how to review. You as a programmer are deciding how it's going to review those data sets. Is it going to be broad, like to understand general behavior patterns? Is it going to be narrow to focus on specific use cases, like customer refunds or onboarding questions? And this is going to really kind of make the answer more powerful for a specific purpose, is really the overarching reason why people make programs built on top of large language model logic. And then in addition to custom data, they'll work with tools and agents. So an agent or tools are databases, search systems, calculators, external APIs. And an agent is a system where the AI can decide when to use those tools in order to complete a task. And then there's security and infrastructure. Securely handle API keys, configure servers, and manage production systems. And then they'll be constantly monitoring and iterating by testing outputs, handling edge cases, which hallucinations, failures, and also what users are doing. And they're continuously refining how this is going to come out in the actual program. So when creating programs with large language model logic built inside of them, you can use tools like LangChain to observe what the model reviews before constructing its response. This gives you a lot of insight into how labor intensive this process can be. And a good programmer will use tools and customized agents with defined priorities to improve performance while still outputting useful results. So as I said, I created this presentation using Gamma, and I started with my content, and it created stylized formatted slides for me that paid attention to the context and translated it into a fitting format. It uses multi-model approach, leveraging ChatGPT 4 and Claude to generate text and structure. It can generate text for you. I didn't really use it for that purpose, alongside AI image models like DALL-E 3. And it also uses Patronus AI to evaluate and improve the factual and structural accuracy of their AI generated content. So just kind of highlighting how these programs are used in action. So I asked, do you want to be an AI developer to build these types of tools? If so, how would you like to learn the skills? And it was pretty close, but the top is experimenting with my current AI skills, even if there are obstacles along the way that I have to figure out. If So this is for people who are already programming. If I wasn't clear, this is for people who also know how to program. And so I'm curious to know how many of you actually have a technical background or are software engineers and are interested in being AI developers. Was a little bit more of the question here. So I wonder if that's a lot of you here, then and you just want to keep experimenting, awesome. And then some people would like the second highest answer is a course that helps you learn the skills while you build projects, which is understandable because there is a lot involved. And so here we go. Okay. And so we at Skill Crush actually teach this in oh, Kathy Adby has to head out. Thank you so much for coming. We teach this in our, for developers, for people who are already software engineers. We have an AI booster pack in order to implement large language model logic into your programs. And if this is interesting to you, in the follow-up email for today, we'll be sending you more information as well as a coupon code for 20% off. And so that's there for you if that's what you want to add on to your skill set as a programmer. All right, so if you could put out question 7, Rob. So the key takeaways here are: parameters shape the output, the role, context, constraints, format, and examples all steer the model toward what you need. And iteration is the skill. Move from vague, improve to excellent by adding specificity, and structure. And prompting is a discipline with many levels, from casual chat to vibe coding to full AI product engineering. The same principles apply at every level. So even when you are coding with them. All right, great. So I wanted to see if you all were more interested in educational webinars like this. I'm thinking of talking about agents next, which they're kind of closely aligned with creating your own GPTs that are making decisions about how to take the prompt and what kind of things are going to be needed in order to get to the best output, which data sets it should be reviewing, which APIs it should draw from, and building these to be more specific to your purposes will get you even more quality results. So I'm so glad that all of you are interested in that. Okay, so now let's open up for general questions.
All right, so I've had my eyes in the chat, and most of them, honestly, you have addressed as we've been going. So if you have a question today that you have not yet asked, please ask it now. We've got 8 minutes left. I want to make sure we prioritize people that are here on the call. While we are waiting, the one thing that I did want to ask, obviously prompting has evolved since the early days of AI, and the early days of AI are like 4 years ago, y'all. So I love that we're talking about this in terms of like, back in my day. But when it comes to trying to stay current with AI, especially if you are someone who maybe doesn't use it for your job, or like you don't have an external reason to daily use it and keep up, are there any like resources or anything that you recommend for like, these are the major things happening in AI right now, or this is how you stay current?
Yes, I highly recommend, just like how it's kind of always been in tech, because it's so fast moving. And this is not just relevant for tech, it's relevant for business, it's relevant for so many fast moving industries, including medical. If you live in an industry that is innovating all the time, you gotta keep tabs on your favorite writers. Tech writers I follow many, and then my favorite resource is TLDR. It's a newsletter that summarizes the biggest tech news in like 3 sentences each. So it's a great way for me to review, and then they're of course highlighting all the newest innovations as they come out in real time on a day-to-day basis. I don't have to spend my life kind of like wondering if I'm behind and what do I need to search up to make sure that I am not if I'm not missing out on something. I receive it as it's happening. And another point that I want to highlight here is that there's also something to be said about not just like driving yourself crazy with like keeping at the very forefront the entire time. You can let things kind of simmer for a second and see what catches on and see what you see common trends of if you want to dive deeper. It's just for your sanity because this stuff
Mhm.
is changing all the time.
It's good. Stephanie asked in the chat if
Okay.
Skill Crush offers any types of scholarships or financial assistance. I'm not aware of this, so apologies if I'm putting you on the spot with this. I don't know.
No, yeah, no problem. So the 20% discount on this particular program that I mentioned is going to be the best one for that particular program. For Break into Tech, we do, if you're interested in that, we do offer a hardship discount. And so if you want to reach out to me, I would be happy to give you the code for that. I believe it's about 20% as well off of everything. But yeah, we provide discounts on our services. We don't have a like pay once you finish kind of agreement because we're at a much lower price point to start than the average boot camps that teach these kinds of skills, which is very purposeful. We accessibility is very important for us.
Heck yeah. Um, okay, if you are in the, let's say, efficiency mode and trying to make prompts more efficient so that way you're not utilizing as much credits or token usage, what do you recommend for people? Is it like throw at, the kitchen sink at it and make it a big long prompt? Is there better advice out there? What should people know if they're trying to conserve those credits a little bit?
Yeah. See, credits and tokens come into play more often when you are being a programmer who's implementing large language model logic into your program. They want to charge you as a programmer who's benefiting from their technology. And it's not as common that you'll be hitting this as an issue if you are just using the free models, and then especially if you're paying for any sort of thing. But yeah, it is it's not just on a per prompt send in. It's also so the tokens are actually broken down by the phrases. So even if you're like, oh, I'm just going to pack it all into one prompt, that's still going to use multiple tokens versus you kind of breaking it up into many. It also has to do with like what it's doing for you. So if you're putting in a prompt that's going to require it to generate so much output, it will eat those up faster. So just be, have your priorities. Just like while you're considering how to phrase your question, you might have to consider what is priority for you at that time.
Yeah, I'm thinking about like lawyers' retainer fees and how like if you were paying for an hour consult with an attorney and most people come with like 7 pages of like legal pages full of questions. And it's like, listen, we only have 60 minutes. What is most important for you to know? And I will dive like, when I was a paralegal, then like the attorney can dive in deeper on blah blah blah. But like I'm kind of getting visions of that in
Those
my head.
vibes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, my last question. If you are trying to showcase this like AI tool experience on a resume in job applications, especially if it's not something you've had to do for work, so there's not a real easy tie-in of like, here's what I can do for you. How should you be talking about this? How should you be presenting it or, making it known?
So if you use it for work, then you definitely want to be highlighting on your resume how it is that you approached it. You don't just want to be putting in like I use Claude on the daily, and then that's it. You want to be like, I curate the data first. If I'm a marketer, I draw from our audience research, and then I come up with the constraints of the project. I talk with my team about this, and then we feed it to the model and we iterate, and then we go back, and then we meet. Of course, this is like, oh, yeah, this is getting too long for a bullet point on a resume. But this is kind of the approach where you're wanting to really highlight that you aren't just using it, you are using it in a smart way, and you're taking into consideration the security of the data, your you're not
You're not just
relying
turning your
on it.
brain off.
You're
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's really a great opportunity to highlight that. If you are maybe out of work or you just don't use it at work, and you're just trying to get up on your AI skills, that's a really great opportunity to use LinkedIn to talk about what you're learning and how you're using it and how this could be applied in the workplace, how you would approach if you had similar kind of if this is how what I've been learning about working with AI lately. In my past job as a marketer, I would have applied it in this way, and this will really show how you're thinking. Um, Getting certificates and things are not going to do nearly as much for you as showing how you're engaging and what it is and showing how you think, because that's who they're hiring. They're hiring you and your brain and how you approach things. So you can, it's an opportunity to highlight that we didn't have before. I know it can feel overwhelming for someone like myself who actually really doesn't like social media and gets kind of doesn't want added pressure to have to like post regularly, especially when you're doing something like a job search. But when I get into that like mode, it's much easier for me to relax and be like, you know what? This is an opportunity I would have never had before. I would have been like, you have to get into the interview with me, and then I'll answer so well, your mind will be blown. You can put it up for them to find and get a view into how you think. And then they may want to hire you if you were like, I need to get up in front of them to show it to them. Um, you can show that first, and then they'll go, I want you in front of me. Come over, come over. So take advantage of those opportunities.
Yeah, I love this. Okay, Tori, this has been fabulous as always. I know there's a bunch of people that are chiming in the chat that they've really enjoyed this session, and can't wait for more of these. So thank you so, so much for sharing your time and your expertise with us. This is always a joy, and I can't wait to do it again.
Yeah, I love you, Meg. Thanks, everybody.
Yes. All right, y'all, that's it for us today. But truly, go out and have the day that y'all deserve, to have the day y'all voted for. If you are job hunting right now, be nice to yourself, please. It's rough out in these streets, okay? If you are a little treat person or not, listen to Meg. Okay, you just took 60 minutes out of your day to do something positive for yourself and your career. That is not easy. It is a thankless task. So please give yourself the cookie, pat on the back, coffee drink, maybe not Starbucks, is all I'm saying. But whatever it is, take care of yourselves, y'all. If this was your first Power to Fly event, I sincerely hope it will not be your last, and we cannot wait to see